Hey, good morning, 7th grade. This is for the Orange team from Mr. Hildebrand's class for September 15th, Tuesday, September 15th. Just in case your Wi-Fi went out or you were having trouble getting on the Zoom, this is our lesson for today. First, just wanted to remind people about the updates to Zoom. So Zoom is going to require that you log in, or at least the school district Zoom is going to require that you log into Microsoft first. So I want to show you that. So if you go here to Students and you scroll down to Microsoft Office 365, one second here. Okay, let me show you that again. You go down, you hit Students, go down to Microsoft Office 365. I just went right past it. You click on that. It will ask you to log in. Because I'm already logged into my email and stuff, it already has it. But basically, it would show you that page. You'd put in your school email and password. And then it might ask you to set up a security question or something just to make sure it's you. Pick something that you're going to remember. And then you should be logged into Office 365. Now, once you've done that, go to wherever you normally find the Zoom links. If it's on the announcement slide, great. If it's on Canvas, whatever, go to wherever you normally find the links. And next to the links, there should be a password as well. So click on the link, and then it might ask you for a password to get into the meeting. Put in the password, and then you should be good to go. But I did just want to make this in case today you were struggling with it. If you still have issues, just let one of your teachers know. But today we worked through a little bit more of ancient Sparta, and then we moved on to Sparta's biggest rival, and that is Athens. And that is Athens. So we were in the same Nearpod. Now, I did just kind of want to show you, if you are curious about keeping up with our myths, we did watch the myth of Jason and the Argonauts. If you go to TED Ed, it's the myth of Jason and the Argonauts. We're going to watch the second part tomorrow, which is Jason and the Golden Fleece. And then on Thursday, we're going to talk a little bit about how that story ends. Okay, so we did watch that. On the Nearpod, we talked about how women in Sparta, even though they weren't considered citizens, so they weren't allowed to take part in the government, they weren't leaders, they didn't have a whole lot of power, in Sparta they were treated better than in other ancient Greek cities. Remember, this is like 4,000 years ago. They did have more freedom than women in other cities, such as Athens, which we'll talk about in a minute. They were allowed to have friends with whoever they wanted. Men, women, it didn't matter. They could be friends with whoever. And then they enjoyed sports as well. Wrestling, racing, a lot of the track and field kind of sports when you think about like javelin, that kind of thing. And they were just as tough as the men. Because in Spartan society, they wanted everybody to be tough because the women were going to raise the kids. And so they needed to be tough so that they would raise tough kids. We talked a little bit of review about how the boys went to military school, military camp at age 7. It was basically boot camp where they would be beaten and not given enough clothing or enough food, and they would have to steal to survive, and they had to train in combat all the time, and it was just a really tough life. We talked about how in Sparta, the people who were considered citizens were the wealthy, the rich men, and only the men who were born in Sparta, and they were considered the upper class or most powerful, the aristocrats. And they also did have merchants and artisans, people who made stuff for a living, like tools and weapons, clothing, that kind of stuff. And then we did talk about how Sparta would often take prisoners of war. So when they would be in a battle, if they caught enemy soldiers, they would often force them to be slaves and do the farming in Sparta. We talked about how Sparta kind of had one goal, and that was to be military strong, to have the best army. And they were very resistant to change. They didn't like new ideas. They did have some art and culture and writing and plays and stuff like that, but it wasn't a main focus. Main focus was be strong for the next battle. This stuff that's on the Nearpod right here about the decline of Sparta, we're going to get more into it in the next couple of weeks. We did talk about what people's opinions were about who had the best life in Sparta, so you can feel free to kind of respond on your own in the Nearpod. Then we watched this video. I'll show you what it looks like on YouTube in case you want to watch it there. It is by a guy by the name of Mr. Corwin. He's a history teacher out in Oregon. And he kind of just explained, hey, so we've got Sparta, these military powers, these warriors, but they had a rival. Just like our great sports heroes, like maybe LeBron, his great rival might be Kevin Durant, or maybe Kawhi Leonard, one of these other players. Just like, Batman is competing and, going against the Joker, or shoot, I don't know, I'm struggling here, but we see great rivals, maybe Nicki Minaj and Cardi B, right? Something like that. People who compete against each other. That was the city of Athens and the city of Sparta. So if you look up Mr. Corwin, Athens and Sparta, you can catch up on that video. And we moved into talking a little bit about Athens. We talked about how they were a city on the coast, so they developed a very strong navy, and they were great at sailing. This was a VR picture we kind of looked at of the area around Athens. They built these 3-leveled ships called triremes. We talked about the root word tri, like tri-sea, tri-community, elementary school, or triceratops, that dinosaur with the 3 horns. We talked about triangle, shape with 3 angles. This trireme had 3 different levels, so you could have people with oars rowing on all 3 levels, which made the ship very fast. Because they didn't have cannons, they didn't have gunpowder or guns. So you pretty much had to run your ship into the other ships to sink them. And the Athenians, because they had this ship with the 3 rows, they were the fastest. So they had the best navy. We talked about how the Athenians first had a king, so they had a monarchy. And then the nobles and the people with the money kind of took over, and they were an oligarchy for a while. But eventually the rest of the citizens demanded power as well. And remember, for ancient Greece, we're talking about men here. We're not talking about women and children or people who were born elsewhere. It's just Athenian men, men who were born there. But eventually, they do form a democracy, and all the adult men would vote and make decisions together. We talked a little bit about how they set up their government, how they would elect new leaders every year, but they didn't have like elections like we did, where they had campaigns and people would vote for leaders. They actually just chose them by random, by lot. Everybody's name would be like in a bucket, pull it out, and whoever the 10 people they picked that year, those were the leaders. And then anytime they needed to make a decision, they would get everybody together to basically write the law or vote on it together. So that's what we talked about, how Athens, very different from Sparta. They wanted very different things. Sparta wanted to be strong, wanted to have a great military. Athens, they wanted to be very smart and well-educated. So we talked a little bit about that. If you have any questions, please shoot me an email, and I hope you find this video helpful.